author of the philosophy science book, Gijsbert van den Brink, wrote an excellent work on evolution. What a book. What a book.
Wow. I was saying that the more conversation we are having, the more I'm realizing how ignorant I am, and so much is to pursue for me as well in these subjects. It's like, at least for a year or two, like you have filled my whole case of what I have to read, or even for the audience, I believe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Incisive Thoughts, and we are back with a power pack episode. This is going to be something very different from the episodes that we have, because this is going to be an ultimate book recommendations video. And for today, we have none other than our first guest who's coming back on this channel. So I'm delighted to actually welcome back Dr. Shoaib Ahmed Malik, truly a scholar of rare breadth. He is a chemical engineer, philosopher, and theologian. That's why I say he is 3-in-1, a philosopher, a scientist, and a theologian. With doctorates in both engineering and theology. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's pursuing his third PhD. And he is a celebrated author on topics like Islam and evolution. He bridges faith, reason, and knowledge in a way that's both profound and accessible. So it's an honor to actually welcome back Dr. Shoaib Ahmed Malik to this platform.
Assalamualaikum, Khalid. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm truly grateful for being here. Alhamdulillah.
Wa alaikum salam. It's an honor and my pleasure. So yeah, as I mentioned, today's video is going to be an ultimate book recommendations. So this would be starting with your top 5 book recommendations. We can start with an ascending order, like the 5th, the 4th, and then that's how we'll go. So everyone wants to know, like, what is out of your top 5, which is the 5th one that you would recommend as a book recommendation?
So as I mentioned this to you, before we start, that when you ask me, it does vary from place to place, and time, just because of what I'm thinking about, what is relevant to me at the moment. But there are, a few things, a few key texts that I think really stand out. So in this current moment in time, so what is it? September 2025. If you were to ask me, my list would be as follows. So the 5th best book that I would recommend, bearing in mind that I'm talking from my interests and my personal experience, would be applicable to. I'd say my 5th would be Islam's Quantum Question by Nadal Ghazali. May shock a lot of people. I agree with Professor Nadal on many different things. But it may shock some people. But the reason why I think that's a really good book is because for me personally, it opened the world to the field of Islamic science. I remember when I graduated in 2014, this was my first PhD in engineering, and then moved to the UAE. And luckily, alhamdulillah, I was actually able to meet Professor Nadal in person in Sharjah. I even have a personal copy of it. And back then I thought book was phenomenal. It was a great introduction to the whole discussion, but I didn't know enough to be able to have mature perspectives on what he was saying. But I remember that really was a breath of fresh air. It was really remarkable with the way he covered all the different discussion points within Islam and science. So can you have an Islamic science? The whole Ijaz enemy conversation, right? Evolution, design discourse, physics. And so at least for somebody coming in from a STEM background, that was, I think, a nice bridge point. So that's why I would say that would be my 5th best book in my current state of affairs. Like I said, I'm sure that many people will disagree and be quite shocked by that, just because, like I said, we differ quite a lot on our metaphysics. But yeah, it is my 5th best book.
That's brilliant, actually. And Professor Nidal, actually, I did not know of him. I did come across his book because I think Brother Hamza Sources uses some of his quotes to actually expand on the thesis of the multi-layered approach of the Quran, which was brilliant. Yeah. But then I still did not go through the book entirely. Like, I've just had bits and pieces of that book. So this is just my experience with Professor Nidal's work. But then I was having a discussion with Dr. Justin Barrett a few days back. and we were just talking about Islam and science, and he told me that, if you're inviting so many people and you're interested in Islam and science, you should go for Professor Nidal. I'm like, okay, who's Professor Nidal? And then I'm like, okay, oh, this person, oh yes, definitely. So yeah, I'm planning to actually invite him on the channel. Non-Muslims have also recommended him to me. So that was quite profound.
Yeah. He's part of. So if you look at the phases of Islam and science, so the first, I would say, generation of scholars were in the 1980s. These were mostly dominated by Maurice Bucaille, Ziauddin Sardar, Sayyid Hussein Nasr, Naqib al-Attas. These are the main names that come to mind. And then when you look at the second generation of scholarship, so 2020s, so 2000s and onwards, I would say you have people like Bal, you have people like Basil al-Faqi, Rajani, Nidal al-Qasul, etc. So he's part of that scholarship, and so I think his voice really, I think, changed the game when he came out with that particular book, the one on Islam's quantum question. At least I'm talking about in the sense of the academic landscape.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So that was the fifth one. Now let's move on. Yeah, so the fourth best book that you would recommend.
Yeah, so again, I think this would be a controversial title, I have a feeling, but it's actually The Islamic Secular by Sherman Jackson. That would be my fourth book. Yeah. I remember when it came out, I ordered it. I actually ordered it when I came here for my interview at the University of Edinburgh. This is about a year ago in March. And it was sent to the hotel that the university booked for me, and they lost the book. But luckily, they found it the last day. They found it the last day. And I actually read it on my flight from Edinburgh back to Dubai. And it was amazing. It was a solid work. And I think that it's rubbing Muslims the wrong way just because I think they haven't, sat down to maybe appreciate what he's trying to do. So his argument, and for the most part, he's talking as a constructive theologian, right? So the word secular carries a lot of baggage, carries a lot of history. And I think, it rubs Muslims the wrong way. So when you put Islamic secular, it seems like such an oxymoron. But in that book, he's trying to show that there is a difference between being Islamic versus Shari, right? Particularly Shari in the technical sense. So the moment we think of Islam and Sharia, we think they're almost equivalent. And he's trying to show that no, there is a difference between these two things. And the Sharia speaks to certain things in existence, but it doesn't speak to other things, right? So the Sharia quite clearly, which is where we get our law, our understanding of our purpose from, no questions about that whatsoever, right? But does the Sharia intrinsically tell us, and this is a question that I throw to my students, can the Sharia actually tell us how wide, so let me ask you, Khalid, I'll make it even easier. Do you have a bathroom?
Yeah.
Is there a drain in the bathroom? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the Sharia tell you how wide that drain should be? Is there anything in the Quran or Hadith that tells you how wide? No.
I know, right? Yeah.
Now, so you see the point, right? There are things that the Sharia does not speak to, right, in its technical sense. And so, so there are clearly, engineering is not intrinsically a Shari'i conversation, right? Biology is not intrinsically a Shari'i conversation, right? It's an empirical exercise. However, just because something is not Shari'i does not necessarily mean it's not Islamic, right? And I think that's the space he's saying is the Islamic secular, right? Is there things that are clearly Shari'i, but there are things that are outside of the Shari'i in the technical sense that could still come under the purview of an Islamic attitude, right? Where the gaze of God is blessed upon it. So, for example, okay, I don't know what the drain of the pipe should be, when I, designing it for somebody in a house, right? But if I follow with ethical principles, if I understand this is all under the creation of Allah, that's enough to put it in an Islamic secular setting. Now, people may not like the term. Maybe that's just, an Islamic attitude. You can put it that way. But I thought that the book was a very powerful paradigm shifting because I actually resonated with the book precisely because of my science background and because of my students who come from STEM backgrounds. So a lot of my science students, and I completely understand what they're feeling, is that they specialize in science, right? So they go all the way up to PhD. Then they realize they're missing something, and that's when they start getting to Islamic theology and philosophy. And then they discover a whole new world. Oh, I wish I'd studied this. oh, I wish I, went into this, right? And so they automatically then feel like, oh man, my degrees now, I don't feel so committed. I don't feel committed to profession. So I've had students who've said to me that I want to shift fields. But then now the question becomes, is there money in, being an Islamic scholar, being a mufti, etc.? No, right? So there's a clash of identities. There's a synthesis of identities that takes place. And I went through that myself. So
exactly.
what Islamic secular does is that it shows, bro, you can be an amazing Muslim by being a biomedic, by being an engineer. Just be the best in your field, right? And then you to create dominant voices. So I feel the Islamic secular speaks to a whole range of audiences who feel sometimes paralyzed, who feel sometimes that their job doesn't actually speak to the Islamic endeavor. And I feel like that's what the Islamic secular does. It has an amazing bridge point that you can definitely be within the Islamic fold by doing things that are not necessarily Shari'i, but still Islamic, so to speak. So that's why I found that book to be quite powerful. That's me. That is my personal opinion about that book.
Wow. Yeah, so some people say don't judge a book by its cover. We can say don't judge a book by its title.
Yeah. Don't judge a book by its title, right? And I've seen online. I've seen like the nuances. I just felt that for my personal reading, it was a very beautiful text. I really enjoyed it. I'm not into he has some chapters in about the politics. He looks into various political models to apply his theory. I wasn't so interested in that. I was more interested in its implications for science or religion. And I found it very on that front.
So you're endorsing the book only on this specific aspect, not everything within the book.
No, I read the whole book. I just didn't appreciate the political stuff because I didn't have a dog in the race. For me, it didn't really matter, what political one had. I think that's best left to others who have a stronger voice in those conversations. For me, I just took away what I felt was very clearly important, is that something can still be non-Shari'i and Islamic. That's the key thing.
Okay.
That's it. That's the takeaway.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So the fourth one, okay, I haven't read it, but yeah, you have clearly intrigued me to read that one. What about the third one now? Your top third book?
The third one is also by Sherman Jackson. It's the Black. Yeah, it's the Black Suffering. So
Black Suffering. Okay, yeah, I've heard about this book. I've never read it.
The title is actually elusive. It doesn't actually tell you what it's doing in the text. So the Black Suffering it's pretty much an introduction to Islamic theology, if I were to be quite frank, what it's trying to do. So Sherman Jackson, what he does, he looks at 4 different religious models, right? The Mu'tazili, Sha'ira, the Maturidiyya, as well as what he calls the traditionalists, which is largely the thoughts of Ibn Taymiyyah, right? Hanbali, Salafi, whatever label you want to give it that, but it's largely thoughts of Ibn Taymiyyah. And what he does is he introduces you to the historical developments of these schools, as well as their core ideas, right? That's what he does. And then he localizes it to the problem of Black suffering. So, Black people have gone through a very, very torturous history. So how do you make sense of that? How do you make meaning of that? How do you basically engage to some extent with suffering and the problem of evil from a theological context? And he shows this could be the response from the Mu'tazili system. This could be the response from the Ash'ari system. This could be the response from the Maturidi system. And this could be the response from the Taymiyyah paradigm, right? And the reason why I love this text is because he was showing you very clearly how different theological models have different outcomes in their assessments. Right. And it did it in a way which is very non-confessional and at the same time quite academic and objective. But that doesn't mean that confessional and academic are polar opposites. I don't think that's the case. What I'm saying is that he wasn't saying that this is the correct method or that is the correct method. He said that Mu'tazila are not part of Sunni Islam. That's clear, right?
Yeah.
He made quite straightforward. But he was just saying that, look, with each of these models, they have specific assumptions. Those assumptions are then developed into a theological matrix. And if you apply the problem of Black suffering through this is the natija that you get within each model, which is a brilliant move. It was a brilliant move. That book actually became the basis for a book we have coming out called the 7 Classical Perspectives for Islam and Science. That was inspiration for this text that we have coming out in 2026, inshallah. That was inspiration.
Wow.
So in that book, what we're doing is we're not just looking at the problem of evil, we're looking at the entire madhab. So the metaphysics, the epistemology, anthropology, hermeneutics,
Theology. Yeah.
everything, right? And we are specialists in each of these methods. So we have 7 folks, right? So 7 chapters. We have the Maturidi method represented by the founder, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. Qadi al-Jabbar for the Mu'tazili system. We have Fakhruddin al-Razi for the Ash'ari method. We have Avicenna, Ibn Rushd for the Falasifa, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Ibn Arabi, right? So quite a diverse range of methods there. And you will see for readers, it's literally just an extension of Sherman Jackson's work. That's just bringing it into a new context. And we hope that it's just, it's as good and lives up to people's expectations. We just provide the theoretical apparatus. We don't show exactly what is the Taymiyyah response to quantum mechanics or evolution. We just say, this is the method. This is the theological matrix. It's up to you, the reader, to be able to connect those dots to your inquiry.
Oh, wow.
Right. So Sherman Jackson.
Yeah, that is brilliant.
That is the inspiration for that. This book was the inspiration for it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So now I'm interested to know your last 2 recs. So what was the second one?
The 2 are the second and first are both by Ghazali, Muhammad al-Ghazali.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
number 2 is Faisal Tafriqa, right? So the Faisal is a very short text by Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. Just for those people who don't know, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, Hujjat al-Islam, right? Very famous Islamic scholar. And he died in 1111. And this is a scholar who shaped me personally a lot, like a lot. His works have been transformed for me personally, but also he informs a lot of my academic work. And so the second on this list is actually this short treatise that he wrote, the Faisal. And the Faisal is literally just a very practical way of dealing with differences of opinions in theology.
Oh.
And so in that text, so he in his period, there was a lot of takfir going on. Surprise, surprise. So, right? So there's a lot of takfir going on. So the Mu'tazila are saying you guys are, Mujassima. The Hanbalis are saying you guys have Mubtadi' beliefs. This is bid'ah, what you believe in, right? So a lot of back and forth, a lot of excommunication is going on. And Abu Hamid al-Ghazali wanted to pen down a text that allowed people to appreciate where and how these differences come from, right? And is that none of these are seriously problematic except for the Falasifa, because they question the truthfulness of the Prophet ﷺ. So he has his own criteria. I'm not going to go into the details here. The only method that actually questions the integrity of the Prophet ﷺ are the Falasifa. That's why he's very harsh and critical with them. But with the other, to say there is hermeneutic disagreement in here, and we should all learn how to be brothers and sisters, acknowledging where these differences come from. When I learned this text, when I went through this text, this is why I stopped getting involved in debates. And now the details of how and why, this is not the purpose of this session. But what he basically provided a model, basically the adab of ikhtilaf, right? How do you deal with disagreement? And we just finished going through this text with some of my students. And one student said that she had a sigh of relief. She's like, I can breathe now, because she didn't know how to navigate these differences, particularly with the online stuff that you see on YouTube, the polemics between Muslims. So that text really just made me realize that I'm not going to waste my time with ikhtilaf. Like, I understand where my red lines are, of course. We're not going to resolve those or blur those. But I would say that, his text is it speaks to a lot of contemporary issues that we have amongst Muslim spaces on how to actually deal with difference of opinions. Because what happens is sometimes, particularly young guys, I was at, like I said, at one point in my own experience, you get very zealous about your method. Oh, Ash'ari is the only way, Ibn Taymiyyah is the way, this is the haqq, right? So I think that Ghazali gives a more nuanced way of looking at this conversation. And it allowed me to kind of deal with ikhtilaf quite easily and naturally without worrying too much about, doing takfir on someone. And really the main message of that is that Allah's mercy is very, very vast, and our understanding is very, very thin, and we need to be able to appreciate and give as much due diligence to your fellow brothers and sisters in Islam. I think that really is a core message of that text. The details are where it gets exciting, but that's the broad message of that text. It's not a feel-me-good text. It's not like I said, blurring the boundaries of what is correct and false, but it's giving you a more appreciable way of looking at ikhtilaf amongst different sects.
Wow, I'm very interested. I note down the exact name of the book. Can you?
The criterion, so this book was, I'll give you the book here, which is, so Sherman Jackson, for your English speakers, he actually translated this, criterion, Ghazali. Just give me a second. So the English text is called On the Boundaries of Theological Tolerance, right? And and Faisal Tafriqa, right, is the text. It's just basically the dividing line between the ones that are crypto Muslims, and the ones who are actual genuine mu'mins, right? So it's a very beautiful text, very, very beautiful text. Very, very nice to read in light of the current observations of the Muslim world. So that's book number 2. And
Okay.
yeah. Now the first book is actually the book that I think it gave me the most clarity in my entire life. It's actually This is it. This is Ghazali's most mature theological work, in which he lays down the Ash'ari creed. I found this to be incredibly eye-opening. Because I particularly went through this text, not only did it help me kind of get a clear sense of how to understand reality, God, nature, and all of that, it also gave me a very clear vision on how to see things. And believe it or not, most of my early work was actually informed by this text. So when I do Islam and science, it's literally just applying what he says here in practice. Hence the name of my monograph, Islam and Evolution, Al-Ghazali and the Modern Evolutionary Paradigm. I just take the idea that he's suggested in here, and I've localized them to a conversation within evolution. And so I found the text. Sorry, go ahead, Khalid.
Yeah, my question was, so is this only Ash'aris can benefit from it, or other theological creeds also people can read where they'll have something to take away from this book?
So I think this depends on the individual. If the person is open to understanding different madhabs, so for example, I read Maturidi scholars, I read Ash'ari scholars, I read Ibn Taymiyyah. We actually have a whole stock coming in next week from Jordan, right? I read Shi'i theology, the Falasifa, the Hukama, etc., right? I just recently got, for example, Suhrawardi's texts that I'm hopefully intending to go over. So if you have an open attitude that you can see benefit in some works, and of course you have to make personal judgments. Yes, this will be beneficial. You'll find some interesting ideas in there. But if you are modern and in one madhab, my way or the highway, and if you're not Ash'ari, this text will not be of help to you. No, there's about that, right?
Yeah.
Primarily an Ash'ari kalam text. That's what this is. What Ghazali does is that, and what's really interesting about this is that he only sticks to the primary matters. He doesn't get involved in the more like subtle conversations you find in later kalam. So in more advanced books of kalam after Ghazali, in Razi, in E.G., Tazani, etc., you get into whole like micro discussions about what is the nature of time, what is the nature of space, atomism and all of that, right? Whereas Ghazali doesn't get bogged down with any of that. It's just very, very jalili matters, not daqiqi, right? And as a result of that, I think it provides absolute crisp clarity on how to just understand a theological matrix without worrying about secondary things. So I'll give you an example, right? The Ash'ari madhab is very well known for subscribing to a position known as atomism, where everything can be divided up into jawahir. Jawahir are these fundamental atomic units. Everything, me, you, the world, mountains, everything, right? And they had reasons. They had reasons for doing that. The reason why they believed in that is, okay, if you're telling me that this and a mountain, if they can be divided infinitely, then that means this book and a mountain has infinite parts each, which means they're the same. Infinite here. That's a contradiction.
Right.
That's why they suggested, okay, at the very bare bottom, at the constituent level, there must be one fundamental unit. This must be the Jawhar. Okay? They subscribe to it. That's why they subscribe to atomism. Now, in Ghazali's teacher, Imam Juwaini, there is a sentence that I read from him just to show you how strong some people gel onto atomism. Juwaini is he has a text in, I think it's in Isha, one of his texts, I forgot now. He says it is min arkan ad-din. It is from the pillars of the faith, atomism.
Oh,
Juwaini said that, right? It is from the pillars of
oh,
faith, right? From one of the core pillars of faith, right? Now, Ghazali, if you actually read his text, you know how much attention he gives to atomism? 1-2 sentences maximum in the beginning, bus. That's it. That is it.
oh.
He doesn't defend it at all. He just takes the general idea and then he just runs with that. That's it. Indicating, because Ghazali is not the one who just, sidesteps. If he doesn't find it, worth deliberating over, he'll just ignore it, right? So it's interesting. He doesn't, like, Juwaini spends pages upon pages defending atomism, all the different properties of atoms, etc., etc. Ghazali, just 2-3 sentences, move on. So for him, was what I suspect, what I'm getting from Imam Ghazali is that this is a placeholder of ontology, right? Whether atomism is true or not, whatever. But if it's there, this is what the Ash'ari Kalami framework would look like.
Okay.
I find Ghazali, what Laura Hassan calls him is he's a practical theologian. He's a pragmatic theologian, right? He just cares your fundamental beliefs. After that, it's all open for conversation, right?
Oh, that's brilliant. And yeah, atomism itself, like within the Islamic theology, is a very debatable issue, and many people have arguments against it, for it. Yeah, but then keeping that aside, also there is a lot to benefit from this book. Like that's
yes. Yeah. There's a lot to benefit from this, right? How do they understand the sifat of Allah? How to understand the nature of Allah? How to understand that Allah relates to the natural world, right? Now, of course, there are going to be disagreements, right? So, for example, Ghazali is a very hardcore divine command theorist. He doesn't believe in effective morality, for example, right? Morality is whatever Allah wills. If Allah says this is good, that is good. If Allah says this is bad, that'll be bad. That's it.
That's also very controversial issue.
Very controversial opinion. So other methods don't necessarily subscribe to this opinion, but this is a very well Ash'ari stance, right? So you have to understand what you're going to get out of this as you process text. If you're coming in here to better understand Ash'ari theology, at least in its earlier formations, this is a very good text. Very, very good text to go.
Okay, brilliant. So now we have all of your top 5 books, and every one of those actually maybe touched on science, or personally how you make sense when you are within a scientific field, or how do you make sense of creed. So all of this was very valuable. Now we have, I think, which is actually a section which I think is going to be the most interesting section in this video, which is we are going to have a rapid fire round. And this rapid fire round would be me giving you any particular field or subject, aspect, an avenue, and what book comes to your mind which had the most impact, or what currently you think is gonna be helpful and you would recommend for people if they are going pursuing that field. So this is going to be a rapid fire round, so we don't necessarily have to go in depth. If I'm intrigued, I'm going to ask you to give me more insights on that book, or else we'll go very swiftly with one book.
I go to Amazon in case I forget the name, so I can search the name if I forget the title. So there are many books.
Oh wow! All
right, let's go, Khalid.
And before we start the rapid fire round, I just want to say one thing. These people don't know. I would recommend people to follow you on Twitter and see this person is when it comes to reading books, it's on next level. Like when I follow you, within a day or two, sometimes I feel, okay, now you've read this book, and now this book came in, and and I'm like, when I read, I have just one book, and it takes me days sometimes to just read one book, and it's really inspiring to see, you just how people binge on Netflix, you do, you kind of read. I think you can read 2-3 books in a day, right? It's not a big thing for you.
The maximum I've done is 2 books a day. That's the maximum.
Oh wow! And also, so do you have these moments where you pause and okay, no, wait, I have to internalize that first, or Well, that's also like, now
The,
we've gone past that stage.
the reading strategy depends, right? So if I'm reading a topic that I already know, it's very easy for me to read a text because I know then the broader conversations, right? So that's why if I pick up a book in Islamic theology or Islamic science, I can read it pretty efficiently and I don't need to pause. My main thing is, however, is that I highlight. So, for example, yesterday I was reading this text, Studies in
Mm.
Ottoman and Culture. So I have my highlights throughout the whole text, right? And the idea here is that if I ever need to go back, I need to know the main points that are in this text.
Oh,
The key thing is, can I summarize this text to myself once I finish it? If I cannot, then I've not read it. That's why I always suggest that have a highlighter. If you're not highlighting, because what does a highlighter do? It forces you to repeat what you just read. And if you do it several times, it gets ingrained in you. Now I know what this text is. I don't need to worry about it again. I don't need to reread it again. And if I wanted to find the specific quotes, I have them now in my highlights,
wow. Okay.
right?
Yeah, that's
If I
brilliant.
in a new topic, however, Khalid, then it may take me a while to be able to get an idea of what's going on here. So, for example, when I first got into AI, I remember instead of being able to read a book in a day, it took me maybe a few days, 4 or 5 days, right, just to appreciate the terminology, the scope, what is the disciplinary matrix here. But once you get it, خلاص على طول, it's very simple after that.
Okay. Okay. MashaAllah. Okay. So let's start with the rapid fire round now. So the first topic, and it's going to be very random. Okay. Anything that comes to my mind, and I have a list, and it's not something that is very structured.
Sure.
One book that comes to my mind first is, the subject is Islamic history. Which book comes to your mind when it comes to reading Islamic history?
Islamic history. There's quite a few. I'm just now trying to figure out which one would be the best one here. I would say one of the best history books, at least the one that impacted me quite recently, was Alexander Nish's book. Alexander Nish's book. He wrote a book on Ibn Arabi.
Okay.
And this book is called Ibn al-Arabi in the Later Islamic Tradition: The Making of a Polemical Image in Medieval Islam. That's one. And there is also one by Khalid al-Ayhad. Where is it? Just a second. Yes. Islamic Intellectual History in the 17th Century. Scholarly Occurrence in the Ottoman Empire and the Maghrib. Those are two that I would recommend. Those are the two that I'd recommend.
Oh. Yeah, that's brilliant. Wow. So I think, just how I planned is going properly in check. So now the next subject is science and religion in general, which have a comparative study of religion, science, that kind of a field. What books which book comes to your mind?
Okay, so I will just make sure I have the title. So, science religion is very, very big. I'll mention the book that had the greatest impact on me when I was reading science religion. It's actually John Lennox, right? John Lennox
and God's Undertaker.
Yeah, God's Undertaker.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a brilliant book. Yeah, I've read that. God's Undertaker. Okay.
And then the other one was Gunning for God. That's another one that he wrote. Why the New Atheists Are Missing Target. So that's less to do with science religion, but because he talked about science a lot in the text, I remember that was very, very helpful for me. And then there was another one, Where the Conflict Really Lies by Alvin Clanton.
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask about that book because I felt that book is also very brilliant.
So that's a very, very phenomenal text. I really like that. It has very good philosophical precision in there. And there was one more. I'm just trying to find it here if I can. Where is the text? I'm just trying to think. 1 second. There was a very, very creative text. There is one that I recommend that just came out this year. It's called Landscapes of Science and Religion. What Are We Disagreeing About? This is by Dr. Nick Spencer, Hannah Waite.
Okay.
And it's, I would say, the first details of what interlocutors actually think about the relationship, rather than just arguing philosophically armchair. So that's a very, very good sociological study. It just came out a few months ago, but it's a phenomenal book. That's a very, very good book as well. But in terms of like proper constructive stuff, the one, where am I looking at? Oh yeah. There we go. Urki. That's the one I had in mind. Urki wrote
Kojonen.
Yeah, he has this book on intelligent design. I'm just trying. Yeah, intelligent design
Comparative.
The scientism.
Okay, this is a new book?
No. This came out in 2016. right? I
Oh,
thought
okay.
in the field of science religion, absolutely phenomenal. Very good text.
Oh, yeah. So Eric Kojonin's one book I remember, which is I think comparative comparison of something like that, evolution and design, the compatibility
Yeah,
of
that's his new one. That's his new one.
Oh, yeah, that's a brilliant book. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
okay.
perfect. Yeah. But in terms of, because when I read this book, I was in the heat of the evolution Islam writing, and probably the best book on intelligent design in terms of looking at it as objectively as possible was this one. And I really appreciated this text. Another one that you could put, if you wanted to, within science,
Oh, wow.
to put in philosophy of science, is The Physics of Theism by Jeffrey Kaspersky.
Okay.
Theism. That's another one you could put in there.
Yeah. So I haven't read that one. I'll take a note of that. Brilliant. So philosophy and sorry, science and religion. I think we are you are providing a comprehensive list of so many books, and most of them, like some of them which I've read. I think these are brilliant books. Now we move on to another field which is slightly connected but a different field altogether, which is philosophy of science. Which book would you recommend on philosophy of science?
One would be Jeffrey Kaspersky's Divine Action, Laws of Nature. That's his second book that came out Routledge, and that's open access, so you can download it for free. Another book is Gijsbert van den Brink. He is a professor in the Netherlands, Van den Brink, and he has this very beautiful text called An Introduction to Philosophy of Science for Theologians. It's a very, very nice text. So that would be one that I'd recommend without a doubt. And then there's a very thick one for those who are, who are interested in getting more into the details of philosophy of science. There's a really good anthology. It's an edited volume, and it's called Philosophy of Science: The Central Issues. And I'd recommend getting the second edition. That's edited by J.A. Cover and Martin Kurd, and that's a really good book. So what it does is that it has one topic. It has like 6 different articles by different authors, and then he summarizes them at the end. So for a student or a teacher, they are amazing. They're just it's such a but it's 1,000 pages, but phenomenal if you get through.
Wow,
Phenomenal.
wow.
Really, really good. Very, very good. So that's one. But the one that shaped me a lot when I was younger is a text that's not so well known. Let me. So Anthony O'Hare, right? He wrote a book in 1989 called Introduction to Philosophy of Science. It's a blue text, small one. And that was the clearest introductory presentation of philosophy of science. That book.
Wow. So I've read one book by Anthony O'Hare, which is Beyond Evolution. I think I've read bits and pieces of that.
He's written quite a few. But his book on philosophy of science is probably the best one. It really summarizes the field really well. And what's interesting about Anthony O'Hare, another connection that I have with him, is my very first article that I ever wrote. The first article that I wrote in the field of Islamic theology, philosophy, atheism, and all of that was actually with his journal. So there's a journal called Philosophy, and my article in which I talked about atheism and the definition of atheism and how this is being politically utilized to aggrandize the numbers of atheism. He was the chief editor of that journal. He's the one who accepted it. That's my second connection to Anthony O'Hare. So, but yeah, Anthony O'Hare has probably the best. It's not a well-known text. It was written the year after I was born. I was born in 1988. This was published in 1989. But it's a phenomenal text. Beautiful. 16 chapters. Lovely. Very nice.
Oh wow. Just one before I move to the next topic, I think this is going brilliantly, even better than my expectations. I think people, so that even in one field, if you can provide 3-4 books, I think this will be very helpful for avid readers, and they will have a lot, within every subject to go through. So the next field, I'll keep switching and different fields. So one subject that comes to my mind in terms of books is proofs of prophethood. Proving the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Is there any book that comes to your mind?
No, I don't think I've seen that is an area that I don't think I've seen a proper book on. Proofs on prophethood? No, nothing comes to mind. Nothing that at least I'd say is a good read. And even in the classical stuff, So I can just speak from the Ash'ari perspective, right? Or just the general Kalami perspective. The way it works is, at least in this paradigm, is that you prove God's existence via just pure rationality. You use cosmological arguments, contingency, whatever, kalam. And then, okay, so you believe that there's a creator. Now, how do you know that he's sent you revelation? And the connecting point, prophet. How do you establish prophethood? It's via miracles. So that's why the Kalami line is first prove God's existence, then prove prophethood. If you've established prophethood, you've proved revelation, right? That's a general form. There are many discussions that I found in Ghazali, in Fakhruddin al-Razi, but in terms of like a dedicated book, I haven't seen a good book on this front so far.
Oh, great. So anyway, I have some in my mind, so I would just recommend those.
You tell me what you read.
You know, I mean, these are very common books, so you might have already read them. So one is Forbidden Prophecies, I think, by Abu Zakaria. I think that can be considered as a proof of prophethood book because it is prophecy.
Yeah.
There's one more. I forgot the name, but people can see on the screen. Was recently published by Sapiens. It was a translation of an Arab scholar, I think. That is a book that I would recommend because I've heard a lot about this book, and I myself have got to be very honest, read that. But since I know some content of the book, I've heard about it, so I would recommend that. These two come to my mind. Yeah, there'll be more. So there are some. There was one way back in the past. I think Farid Respond talks about Qadi ibn al-Jabbar. I think that I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He was he's actually a Mu'tazili, but he has a book which is a very old book, but that book is specifically for providing proofs of prophethood. So I think
so one of the we recently had a conference at Edinburgh. So we have an annual conference that we call Islamic Colloquium Edinburgh, hence ICE. And one of the articles in there is actually about Qadi al-Jabbar, one of them. One of them is about Ibn Taymiyyah as well. So we're hopefully trying to introduce more discussions in prophethood and those conversations, but I haven't really seen anything that yet excites me about the field. I cannot say, that's the go-to on
I get it. Yeah. So maybe if not proofs of prophethood, what about books on miracles or miracles in Islam? Any book that you can recommend, or the miracle of the Quran, something like that.
Miracles of the Quran, I'm less comfortable with. I haven't seen a book that I think is of good quality there. Particularly the whole Ijaz stuff, I'm less sure of. I'd say the book on miracles in general, however, there are quite a few on this one. So let me just open these up. Okay, let's see, where do you start? So there's a really good book. So starting with a broad angle, so Richard Swinburne, he wrote a book called The Concept of Miracle, and this was published in 1970s. For those of you who don't know, Richard Swinburne, the biggest philosophers of religion, so that's a really good text to get your hands on. There's another text that comes to mind. I'm just trying to see if I can find it. Miracles. There's one here.
C.S. Lewis?
No. See, I didn't really like that text. No, there's one philosophy because we recently published an article on miracles, and I remember we were looking at, it was a Lexington Press. One second, miracles. So in English literature, there are a lot of problems with how they depict miracles in Islamic thought. So either they say, at least what I've seen, is that they say only the Quran is a miracle and nothing else. Muslims don't believe in any other miracle, which is false. Or they don't know the Arabic literature enough such to understand the different conceptions of what a miracle is, right?
Right.
And I think this is an area that needs a lot more like academic production from our side. So that's why we actually wrote that article. It's a systematic presentation of miracles in Ash'ari theology, and we look at Imam Baqillani's ideas in there. But so this one book by Swinburne I thought was quite helpful, and there's another one that I'm trying to find, which I cannot at the moment. One second, I think I know where it is. I'll actually look into my article to find the reference. Research articles, miracles. There we go. 1 second, right here. So okay, here we go. So so from our side, a really good book is by Isra Yazizoglu. She's a Turkish scholar. She's written a book called Understanding the Quranic Miracle Stories in the Modern Age. So here she compares Nush and Sayyid Nursi. So that's a good one. That's a very, very good one to look into. There's another one that I wanted to bring to your attention. Yes, Mark Corner, Signs of God, Miracles and Their Interpretations. I definitely recommend people to read that. I don't agree with a lot what he says there about Muslims, but it's just a good book to get your eyes on. And there is one more. There's a lot of articles. There are more articles that I think are worth looking into. Yeah. Another one to look into, particularly the whole discussion about the whole scientific miracles and all of that. There's a work by Majid Daneshkar. He's an Iranian scholar. He's currently in Japan, Kyoto. Tantawi Jawhari and the Quran. So the first modern tafsir that we have, which really puts together modern science and tafsir discussions, is Tantawi Jawhari. And this is the first English monograph that contextualizes his work and the social political climate around it. That's a very, very, very good book. Very, very good book. And I think the last one that I'd recommend, this is something that I think people might find interesting, is there is a PhD dissertation by Mira Baz in University of Birmingham. She wrote a whole dissertation on online Islamic da'wah narratives in the UK, the case of Aira. So how did Aira instrumentalize, miracles and all of that? So it is a sociological, ethnographic analysis of that. Those are some of the I'd recommend on that. That's not a book, that's a dissertation, but it's a book length treatment. So there it is, another one. Yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant. Any that comes to my mind for any person who's just getting into this field, and simple would be one by again Abu Zakaria, The Eternal Challenge. I think that's a very simple book, and it gives you some basic ideas about miracle. I think another very basic book which just talks about some linguistic remarkable aspects of the Quran is by Noman Ali Khan. I think Divine Speech.
Divine Speech, which he did with the who did he co-write that with? Sharif from the one, I think I was mistaken.
I don't remember. So there are some, maybe one more I can attach on the screen. So now we covered one aspect, which is proofs for prophethood and miracles in general, and also miracles for the Quran. One thing that comes to my mind is also you had a recent conference on that topic as well. So there were many different scholars that came in, and they were presenting miracles. Is that correct? What happened with that conference? Can you give us just a brief summary?
That took place. So we are doing online conferences every year in July, and we have a call for papers every year now. And the idea is to break down visa barriers, logistic barriers. So it's online, no matter where you are in the world. If your paper is good, welcome to the conference. That is coming out as a special issue in a journal, inshallah. That'll be coming out very soon. We had, I think, about 140 applications for the conference.
Oh, wow.
Of those, only, I think, 18 were selected. Of those 18, only 8 are going ahead for special issues. So you can see it gets trimmed down to the very best art. And I'm not sure if I can say this publicly, but let's say one well-known da'i in the Muslim space got his article accepted. So that's a good step in there. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that'll be coming out soon, inshallah.
Wow. So people, even if as you mentioned, we need more in this field. So there is already something forthcoming, and people can actually wait for it as soon, and people are able to access some of these avenues which we are talking about. Miracles.
I 100% believe that because one of the main problems that we have is, when you're doing work on Islamic theology and philosophy, one of the biggest hurdle is Arabic, right? You need to be able to engage primary texts. If you cannot, it doesn't have to be Arabic. It can even be Farsi, it can be Urdu, it can be Turkish, but at least have a primary source, right? Because in the English space, a lot of these non-English texts are not discussed in the academy. So I think bringing these to light is super, super important. Of course, that takes time and training. But once you get over that hurdle, then you begin to see the benefit of doing stuff. So this is the reason why, not just in Islamic science, but also Islamic philosophy, Islamic theology, there's just so much interest in developing the field of Islamic theology and Islamic intellectual history. Because when we think about the history of the West, history of Christianity, we usually have the well-known figures, right? Aquinas, Augustine, right? we have Newton and blah, 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 blah. But we still don't have a clear historical mapping of the Islamic space, particularly because a lot of these texts are buried in libraries, so they're manuscript form. So bringing them from manuscript to a critical edition is a task. And then analyzing those, putting them out in the form of dissertations or articles, that's another task. So there's a lot of things that are being done. And alhamdulillah, now more and more people are getting involved. And I think we will see more and more, inshallah, in the next few years to come in this space.
Inshallah. That is brilliant. So now maybe we can move into another subject, which is, I think, your expertise, which is Islam and science, book recommendations.
Yeah. So as I said, one is Nadal's book that I think will be quite useful for people. There's actually a book by a Shi'i scholar, Mahdi Kulshani. And the book is very hard to find. It's very difficult to find. I found it by luck myself. It's a thin book, very thin book, like less than maybe perhaps 6,000 words. And the book is called From Physics to Metaphysics. Very simple title, super simple title. And the reason why I think this is a good book to have is because, particularly for the STEM students, this goes to because when you're in STEM, you're stuck in the STEM dabba. You're stuck in the STEM box, right? So what is theology? What is philosophy? What is metaphysics? It's an excellent transition to understanding those wider conversations.
Wow.
So,
okay.
For me personally, that was a very, very useful text, From Physics to Metaphysics. So that's one I really enjoyed. Another one which I really enjoyed was David Solomon Jalajil's book on Islam and evolution. This was with University of West Cape in 2009. That was a really, I think, eye-opening text for me as well. Another text, there is a 4-volume set by Muzaffar Iqbal. It contains a bunch of articles from the Journal of Islamic Science, and it's published with Routledge. It's 4 volumes, very, very nice. It's really interesting and wide-ranging. He also has a monograph, Muzaffar Iqbal, on the history of Islamic science, though he sometimes, I think, pushes certain arguments too far, but that's a very, very good book to have. I'm seeing my books there, that's why I'm looking that way. And another book that I thought was quite interesting and helpful was Basel al-Ta'i's book, God, Islam, and Cause, something like that, by Kalam Research and Media. And that's the first, I would say, work that takes quantum mechanics very seriously and tries to integrate it with Kalam, for example. So just those theoretical exercises were very, very interesting to see. And then from the historical side, the one that I found super fun to read was Ahmed Dalla's book, Islam, Science and History, with Yale University Press. That is an excellent book. And that one of the things about that book is that it shows you some of the micro interactions we've had in the past, but also a lot of the gaps.
With evolution.
No. Just science broadly. Just science in broad, right? Starting with the Prophet all the way to now, right? It has, I think, 4 sections. And it talks about like a lot of the things that we can talk about. Like, for example, we know a lot more about Islam and science in the past 150 years, but still, like, some of the earlier stuff, particularly the 14th to the 19th century, that is still a blank phase. Like, we still don't know what happened here, right? Because the decline narrative, right? There's a reason why the decline narrative came up, because of Orientalism, because people weren't looking into manuscripts, they weren't building up, narratives, etc. I think now we're coming to the terms of these conversations. Now new books are coming out of this space, and Dallal does a good job in showing you some of the episodes that we've had in our Tawaf, but also what are the blank spaces. And that book does a very, very good job. So I'll give you one example that really, I think, struck me quite well. So when the Sahaba, when they went all over the continents to be able to spread the message of Islam, naturally astronomy wasn't well established at that point in time. Astronomy came in a few centuries later. Now there was a debate in place which I wanted to know more about, but Ahmed Dallal just pointed to it. He didn't go into the details, right? So one of the debates in place was, so the Sahaba, because they didn't have astronomical data, so to speak, sometimes the masajid that they left behind did not point to Mecca. They pointed elsewhere. Now with astronomy, okay, we now have clearer resolution of where Mecca is, right? So when you want to, so the question, there was the debate that emerged. Should you change the orientation of the masajid, yes or no? Some people were saying, no, the Sahaba left this. How can we question the authority of the Sahaba? You see the point? So the reason why that's interesting for me is I want to generally know, did we have episodes like the Galileo affair in the Muslim world? I do not believe there's a clear answer to this, because I don't think we have enough mapping in our history. I think there's going to be episodes where there's clear harmony, But I think there's also going to be episodes where you have certain disagreements. Like having a full monograph or a detailed understanding of those conversations, like this one, it would be great to see that. You see my point?
Yeah.
So this is the history. This is why our next conference for in Edinburgh is actually called the Histories of Islam and Science. What are the different interactions that have taken place across our history, also in different parts of the world? So the history of Islam and science in the Arab world will be different to in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Pakistan, India before partition. Even there's history of Islam in England, right? In the UK, Abdullah Quilliam, right? He used to do. He had durus. He had the lessons on science in the 1900s, early 1900s, right? So we need to map all of that, and I think more awareness about some of these different trajectories is what I'm hoping that we can cover in the next 5 to 10 years, inshallah, to be able to have a richer understanding of what Islam and science was like throughout our history, not just like micro episodes here and there.
Wow, that's brilliant. And of course, the last one is, of course, your own book on Islam and evolution. That's, of course, worth reading for everyone. And just wanted to ask you one thing, which is I've gone through your book, but recently I got to know that you published another edition of your book. Is that correct?
No. I haven't published another edition. What has happened is it has been translated into 6 languages. That's what came out. So it was translated to Arab, Hausa, Indonesian, Bahasa. There was also one on Albanian that I didn't know about. So it's been translated into multiple languages. Urdu is currently being done right now. I think it's halfway done. Yeah, Allah the shukr. Like I did not know that it was going to be received so well. And it's been fadlullah. So, but there may be a second edition at some point. But I am definitely working on other projects right now. So my next project is actually less on Ghazali, but more on Fakhruddin al-Razi. That's my next one. Fakhruddin al-Razi and human nature, human uniqueness, conversing him with AI, for example. Like how do you understand human nature in light of the paradigm that's presented by Fakhruddin al-Razi, for instance?
So that's brilliant. So this is where maybe because this is your field of expertise, I think we can spend a few minutes more on this, which is that when we talk about Islam and evolution, okay, you gave us a full history of so many different lines of books and stuff. How about just general religion and evolution? You have any books on that?
Evolution, religion in general. One of the books that I really like in this space is Joshua Swamidass's book, Genealogical Adamic Exceptionalism. That's a very good text. Another book.
I've read that book.
By Mark Harris. He was actually my supervisor. In fact, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I'd be here. He was very instrumental in my career in science and religion. He has a book called The Nature of Creation, and that's a good book in terms of looking at different ways of modeling the interaction between the Bible and the evolutionary science. So that was a really good book that I found very useful. There was also another one that I'm trying to. I think it's a Catholic tradition, the Catholic tradition, and because I'm mostly interested in the theological impact, right? Evolution. Yeah, From the Dust of the Earth, Benedict, the Bible, and the Theory of Evolution by Matthew Ramsey. That's a good one. There's another one that I am trying to remember. Where is it? No, it's not here. Catholic Responses to Evolution, maybe? Catholic Responses to Evolution. So Catholics are very similar to, I'd say Sunni mainstream Islam. Besides the fact that they have this understanding and reverence of authority and all of that, right? That structure is very similar to, I would say, a lot of how Sunni and Shia Muslims look at their tradition. So there's one book that I'm now trying to remember. It's just not coming up. Yeah, but there's one on Catholicism that I would strongly recommend. There's also one by Gijsbert van den Brink, the author of the philosophy science book. Gijsbert van den Brink wrote an excellent work on evolution, and I have the title, Reformed Theology and Evolutionary Theory. What a book! What a book!
Wow!
What a book! This guy is a theologian.
The book.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying that the more conversation we're having, the more I'm realizing how ignorant I am, and so much is to pursue for me as well in these subjects. Subhanallah, that's great.
Alhamdulillah. Allah
Yeah.
shukr, Alhamdulillah. I'm sure that there's several things that you know that I know nothing about. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, but I take it as something very good that, when you come to know, okay, there is so much to pursue more, it excites me
there's
actually.
so much. Wallahi, there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so evolution
Yeah.
is very fun. As a so the reason why evolution is so sensitive, it's very sensitive, is because it
Mm.
by its very nature, it's forcing you to rethink about multiple things at the same time. It's forcing you to rethink about the Adamic narrative. It's forcing you to rethink about hermeneutics. How do you interpret scripture? Forcing you to
Right.
rethink deep questions like chance in the process of creation, right? Forcing you to think about, would God really create a world in which all of these species go extinct? Like, does that really show a God that is wise, that is beneficial, etc., etc.? So some of these concerns may not, be applicable to all madhabs, but what it does is that because it forces so many theological questions in one go, actually creates a lot of tension. And I
Right.
think that's why it's a very sensitive playground. So you have to, I think, learn how to just be very sensitive to different theological traditions where people are coming in from. So I find it very interesting to see evolution as a case study, because depending on what your method is, what your theological backbone is, you will be approaching this conversation differently from one person to another.
Yeah. So that's brilliant. And what about Kojonin's book, The Compatibility Between Design and Evolution? Do you think that's who you
That's also
recommend, or you?
yeah. I don't really care much about intelligent design. Not that I say that's possible, but I'm less interested on design discourse. That's not really my. It doesn't excite me like design discourse.
Yeah. I get.
So, but that's definitely a good book in the academy. There's no doubt about it. In fact, the guys from Intelligent Design, they actually criticized them in an article, and then Robe just responded back to them quite recently. So there's a good, healthy exchange between these two.
Oh,
It's
wow.
very yeah. So I think that's
So that reminds me one good book.
sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
no.
you're saying something.
I was just saying about the
I was
article,
saying
but
that reminds me.
sorry, I think there's a delay. There's a delay here. So go ahead, Khalid.
Yeah. So I was saying the intelligent design movement. One book that you would recommend that summarizes it, or shows that they have some, like, anything that you like about any book that you would recommend to go through the whole intelligent design movement, or
Yeah.
just a book on intelligent design.
Yes, there is. One is Erke's book, the first one that I mentioned, and there's one I think by Wood. Let's find Intelligent Design. Wood. There is a very good historical mapping of. Hang on, 1 second. I will find it right here. So research. I'm just going through my reference list just to make sure that I have this book for you. There's a really good book which talks about the history of intelligent design, and I thought that was very, very, very well done. I really like that. But I'd say definitely the main works of Michael Behe, Stephen Meyer, Dembski, for example. But there's also, where is Wood? Wood. Is it Jonathan Wells, Waller? No. Yeah, Jonathan Wells is a good one to also get into. Numbers. Miller, no. Just give me a second. Johnson. Yeah, Philip Johnson is also a good person to look into for this kind of thing. It's not coming to me. Oh yeah. Peter Bowler. Bowler is another a person to look into. He has some very good works on evolution, but on design discourse in particular, there is where is it? Yeah, there's a really good text. No, Dembski. I can't find it at the moment. Doolittle? No, that's someone else. Yeah, I can't find it. I can see the books that are quite. I think it's, yeah, I'll send it to you. But there's he's written 2 books. He's written 2 books on the history of design. Like it's a nice neutral perspective on it. But one book that people might be interested in is a textbook. It's called Introduction to Design Arguments, and it's written by Benjamin Johnson. That's a very good text. That's a very, very good text as well. That's like an introduction to different design arguments, design discourses that I think people might benefit from. Myers, Miller. Nah, I can't find it. I can't find this text that I'm looking for. It's one author. He's written 2 books on the whole thing. But what is the name of the author? I'm not remembering at the moment. I remember the cover. I just don't remember the author. Chala, leave that with me. I'll send that to you, inshallah.
Done. Now again we'll stick to evolution because there's something more that I want to touch on, which is now within your book you explain 4 different positions within the Islamic framework which can try to reconcile evolution in some or the other way. One is creationism. One is, for example, no exception.
Yeah.
One is human exceptionalism. One is Adamic exceptionalism.
Yep.
So first of all, so I think you would also agree that no exceptionalism as a position is not viable within our framework.
Yeah, I think that I can very comfortably say across both Sunni and Shi'i, if you are Orthodox Sunni or Orthodox Shi'i, I think no exceptions is just because Allah created the world, you believe He can do miracles. It's just completely overreading the text, bypassing the text.
Right. Okay, so that's brilliant. So so within these 3, or maybe we can have books for each if there are within the Muslim world, or maybe like for example what I'm working on right now is human exceptionalism. I've been trying to see if there is any space within the Muslims who are providing some arguments or not. I've had some guests also, like I've seen Christians have developed a lot for Muslim exceptionalism. There's not that equivalent within within our circle, nor for Adamic exceptionalism, I think. So do you have any books for for human exceptionalism first, and then maybe we can move to Adamic exceptionalism as well?
I think human exceptionalism has been the general stance for most people, and I think it became much more popular with Yasir Qadi's work, which he did with Nader Khan, Yaqeen Institute. That really is the main article. Whether I know about a dedicated book on human exceptionalism, nothing really comes to mind.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think of, like is there one book that really articulates human exceptionalism really well and argues for it really well? I don't see it. Oh, there is one that came out from a Shi'i perspective, Fatma Melji. She's written from an Ithna Ashari perspective. That came out quite recently. But that's from an Ithna Ashari perspective. That's a Shi'i perspective. From a Sunni angle, I don't know.
The name of the book is?
1 second. I'll have it right here. I remember I wrote a foreword for that text. It was a good text. It's called "Becoming Adam: Reconciling Evolution, Revelation, and the Quranic Human Story" by Fatma Melji.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a good book to read if you're interested in the Shi'i perspective. From a Sunni angle, nothing. I can't think of anything right now.
Exactly.
Most of the people that have come to mind are creationists, right? Well, he's a creationist, right? The only one who I think is human exceptionalist and they've articulated properly in paper is Yasir Qadi and Nader Khan. That's the stuff on paper. Do you have?
I have one paper from a Muslim. So that is by Zaid Abu Huraira. I'll share it with you. It's interesting. By Zaid Abu Huraira, he is trying to build on what Dr. Nasir Khan presented, and trying to go deeper into theology. And he's saying that that is not sufficient, and he said that you need a deeper level of theology to make sense of human exceptionalism. So I would recommend that by Zaid Abu Huraira. People can see on the screen. Apart from that, from a Muslim perspective, I don't know. From a Christian perspective, there are many. I think Dr. Fazl Rana would recommend his book. I think I had an interview with him. I think he is arguing for human exceptionalism in some sense. His book is Adam. Who was Adam? Something like that.
Yeah. I remember what you're talking about. Yeah, Fazl Rana. Yeah. But I think that all of these were written before Joshua Somira has published his book.
Yeah.
I think that Christians are now rethinking a lot after Joshua published his book. Because what is Joshua's claim? Joshua's claim is that the Bible only speaks about your genealogy, right? It says nothing about genetics. So, for example, we have some viruses that affect our DNA, but we're not going to coerce our father, for instance, right? So if the Bible is silent on genetic ancestry, and we clearly have genetic ancestry according to science with the rest of the biological kingdom, does that then mean that we can hold on to the Adamic narrative? And he says the data, the empirical data, will look exactly the same, even if there was a miraculous creation of a couple and they became our universal ancestors. He said the data is the same, right?
Yeah,
Makes perfect sense. That makes
that will. Even though, like, now, since we are in the topic of human exceptionalism, I would, like, Dr. Fazran, I think there's one video I will attach which he tries to explain how, from a human exceptionalism perspective, also, like, the data, the genetic data, how he can make sense of it. So that was interesting to just see, like, within human exceptionalism, how can someone make sense of that data? And then one more article that comes to my mind, I think, which was, we can say human exceptionalism was by Abdullah Andalusi. In some sense, I think it was arguing for human exceptionalism. So that is what I have in mind. What I have tried to do is I have guests on my channel who speak for human exceptionalism. So I had Dr. Fazrana once. I had one more person. He was Dr. Mehirutu Guta, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly or not, who proposed this new model. He calls it the hard problem of human exceptionalism, where how we have a hard problem, like, in consciousness. He says that human exceptionalism, he's arguing, like, I can share his thesis with you, that there is a hard problem in human exceptionalism, just like there's a hard problem in consciousness, which science itself cannot explain, because human nature itself, he says, we can argue, can be ontologically different in some sense to other animals. So that was interesting. And there's one video I can share my discussion with him also. So this is something new that I come across, so I had to interview him. Anyway, that's it for human exceptionalism. What do you think about Adamic exceptionalism?
I don't think there's a book on that yet. I don't think there's a book dedicated. I think that, bear in mind that David suggested the idea in his book in 2009. I was the one who formally coined Adamic exceptionalism in my own work. But has there been a book? No. What I have seen is a lot of interesting engagements in the form of articles. So Dr. Rafaqat, for example, he published a short micrograph criticizing Adamic exceptionalism. Mulana Abbas Ahsan, he just recently had another criticism, more from the side of the tradition, like not from the science, but from the traditional side. That's interesting. It's good to see that those criticisms. From the other side, I have received criticism from Stefano Bigliardi, who is saying that Adamic exceptionalism doesn't hold up scientifically or that kind of thing, which I disagree with. So, and those, I have my responses that are coming out soon. So I think definitely there's good discussions happening now in the academics. But in terms of a book, I haven't really seen it. My argument is even more, I think, having gone through the tradition a bit more, and this argument I did not know about before I wrote, after I wrote my book. I just knew about it shortly after. So one interesting conversation that we have in our own tradition, believe it or not, is the interbreeding of jinn and humans. And the most explicit on this issue, it's not Ash'aris, it's not Maturidis, it's Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah is the most explicit. He said that not only is it well known, it's mashhur. So he's mashhur. Not only is it mashhur that they interbred, but they had children. This is well known. He says this in Majmu'ah. He says that, right?
So that's Ibn Taymiyyah's position.
Yes, Ibn Taymiyyah said this, and you know who told me this? A very famous da'i, who I'm not gonna name just out of respect for that brother, but a da'i told me this online. Very famous English speaker, right?
Wow.
So, and I remember when I was speaking to a Taymiyan person, so he came up to saying, Shoaib, what is this Adamic exception that you are propagating? And I told him what evolution is, and I told him it was like that. And you know what he said to me immediately? Oh, this is like the jinn. Khalas. He had no problem. He left. so when you're saying that Adamic exceptionalism is an issue, it contradicts the nusus or it contradicts ijma', Habibi, we have something worse in our tradition, which is interbreeding with the jinn. I think it's far more problematic than evolution.
Right.
Even in our fiqh books, in our fiqh books, we've had discussions. Not all people said it's haram. Some people said it's you cannot clearly say it's haram. The nusus, revelation doesn't clearly forbid it, for example. So some people were
right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree. To be very honest, I find Adamic exceptionalism controversial because it is controversial in some sense.
It's new. It's new. It's a new idea. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So I try to stick to human exceptionalism. I think, and what's interesting is that I share this video of Dr. Fazrana with you, and he tries to explain human exceptionalism despite interpreting with other species. And I just found that interesting. I think I have a lot to reflect on it to make sense of it fully. But it's it's an interesting view. So he says that, we can have this view of interpreting but still maintain human exceptionalism. Now, I think that blurs the border between human exceptionalism and Adamic exceptionalism in some sense, but it's an interesting view. One thing that I wanted to talk about within Muslims, I think, which I recently found out, which I think in some sense can, set this debate of evolution aside in some sense, in a very basic manner, is generally within our tradition, within the Islamic tradition, the only issue is the creation of Adam. Is that would you agree with me? Which has to be direct. And
I don't compromise at all on the creation, miraculous creation of Adam.
So recently, what I found out is something very interesting from Elliot Sober. So now I can just explain the whole, in some sense, undermine the entire conflict between evolution and Islam in just one quote. And I was like, that one quote can suffice, I think, in some sense at least, not in the deeper discussions. So there was Elliot Sober recently came on Closer to Truth, and he said that he's talking about the current evolutionary theory we have. He said that I think the theory as we understand it consistent with the hypothesis, not just that God exists, but that God sometimes intervene in human history. That's a kind of interventionist theism, and I think there's no conflict in that. I believe that when he says something like this, I mean, the whole issue in some sense gets dismantled. What do you think?
Yeah. So I think there are two things, right? I think we have to be frank or at least be open to the conversation. We will encounter new things that our scholars of the past never thought of before.
Right.
So if you think of multiverses today, this was not something that they knew. They knew of maybe other planets and all that, but the idea of multiverses, like this would be anachronism. We're positing things in their minds that they never thought of. Evolution is another one of those things. So to say there's ijma' on evolution as if this is haram, this is false. Clearly, this is false. This is a new conversation. This is requiring new deliberation. So I think that from the theological side, there should be an openness to understanding that we believe in miracles. Okay, what are miracles? They are exceptions to the norms, right? So we believe these split apart. We believe, the staff turned into a, right? Now, we are exceptionalists to, for example, fluid mechanics on that point, right? We believe the laws of fluid mechanics, thermodynamics, stop when Allah. Yes? Khalas. The same thing now. Okay, if evolution is true, okay, where do we put the guardrails at the creation of Adam? Khalas.
Right.
And
this is...
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is something we actually dealt with, within our first discussion, if you remember. So
yes. Miracles.
Yeah. So it was very, very interesting. Now, if you allow me, I have one very interesting question, and then we can move on to another topic for books. So I came across this, and I was like, you recently posted. You said that I'll be discussing my topic tomorrow on the jinn and their connection to Adamic exceptionalism. So can you? I was sorry. Yeah. So I was really interested to know what this was. If you can give some summary on this.
Recently, I just published an article with Religions MDPI, and the article is on Fakhdin Al-Ghazi on the existence and the nature of the jinn. Because one of the things that I was looking into is, okay, what is the metaphysical mapping of these entities? Now, there's a whole book which in our tradition, and it's called Ahkam al-Marjan fi Ahkam al-Jan, right? So it's the most detailed book on the jinn. It talks about everything, what they eat, what their origins are, etc., etc. That book makes it crystal clear that the breeding of human jinn is possible. Metaphysically, it's possible. No one denies that, right? Then, now, on the question of fiqh, however, whether it's haram or halal, you would expect everyone to say haram, right? You'd expect no one to say haram. Ikhtilaf on this issue, bro. There's ikhtilaf on this issue. So what I did was, just tap into this book and saying, look, this is one of the most legitimate books in our tradition that is open to the idea of humans and jinns interbreeding. If we have tolerated this, we can tolerate Adamic exceptions. That was the argument. Simple as.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Okay.
Right? So previously my argument was just working by the principle. So by principle, can we create space of Adamic in our Torah? Yes or no? Now the question is there a precedent? And I argue there is a precedent. Here's a precedent.
Okay.
Right? It's not just him.
Yeah.
It's Ibn Taymiyyah, it's Suyuti, it's Imam Malik. Every madhab you can imagine, there are scholars in there who believe in this position.
Wow. Okay. This is very interesting. And specifically the Ibn Taymiyyah one was very shocking for me.
Yeah. It's ironic to me that when I've spoken to Salafis, people who love Ibn Taymiyyah, they're usually, I would have expected they're the most like aggressive solution. But the moment you understand this link, and Ibn Taymiyyah said that, khalas, water on the bridge. Interestingly.
Right. So okay, now just last question on Adamic Exceptionalism and then we move forward, which is that now within Adamic Exceptionalism, I think Craig provides a model. He's not arguing, William Ray Craig, he's not arguing for exceptionalism, Adamic Exceptionalism, but he says that his model is open to exceptionalism as well.
Yep.
Then there is Andrew Locke who provides the model, Joshua Swamidas provides the model, and I think there might be more. I can't think of them as of now. So which book would you endorse out of these options, or which one would you say? We can be open to different possibilities because we don't have any.
Yeah. So look, in terms of finer positions, I don't care about the details. The debate is the following. The debate is really the following. Do you believe Adam, Eve, and all their descendants are unique and pristine and pure? So there's no interaction with other hominins. So that's what we mean by human exceptionalism. Or do you believe Adam's descendants could have interbred with other hominins? That really is the key debate. Now the finer details I don't care about, because all I wanted to know is, are we going for human exceptions or Adamic exception? If you go for human exceptionalism, the strategy here is you push back Adam far enough so there's no such concept as interbreeding, because all of them are the children of Adam.
Right.
So what is Craig's thesis? He puts he makes I think Adam Homo heidelbergensis. I think he puts him 800 years ago, right? 800 years ago. Now the problem with that is that you pushing Adam back, you reduce his cognitive apparatus. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the Adam that we know in the Quran and the Bible, is that the same as the Homo heidelbergensis? So I think there's a danger there. The pushback thesis, just to avoid interbreeding, has that issue. Okay. Now the Adamic exceptionalism, if you do not find the idea of interbreeding disturbing, khalas, I understand that, be Adamic exceptionist. But if you do find it problematic, then you do the pushback thesis. This is what I see people doing. This is what I see. Right? Now, any further details, like for example, there could be the soul enters here at this year in time, I don't care. That is irrelevant to my creed. What I want to do creedally, doctrinally, is my theology open to these two? And I think it's in khalas.
Right.
That's all I care about. I do not actually care about the details. I just cared about what is safe theologically from my side. That was that is it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
My whole point is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create us to argue about evolution. He created us to right? So long as the red lines are clear, and I think people are debating what those red lines are. I think this is the reason why. And it's good. It shows that we are on our feet. It's good. I don't mind criticism. I think debating is good. Academic debate is good. But but I think that is that contradicting my creed? No, I don't see it contradicting my creed.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So maybe we can move into next topic. This topic took a lot of time, but I think it was important because if this is your field of expertise, then definitely you have a lot to offer. So that's why I took a lot of time in this. Now maybe another subject comes to my mind is epistemology. Any book on epistemology that comes to your mind? And we might go fast now.
Yeah, I know. In epistemology, you usually have these anthologies or introduction to. There are two that come to my mind. This one is very bad. I just remembered a book that I read, and it was such a bad book on epistemology. One is 1 second. There's a very, very good book. Just give me a second. Nope. Where is it? It was a history of epistemology. Hang on, Christianity. 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Okay, now let's see if we can. Yes, I have it. So there's a book by J. Wood, Epistemology, Becoming Intellectually Virtuous. There's a book, How Do We Know, by James K. Dew and Mark Foreman. These are written from Christian angles, but they were very helpful for me for understanding how epistemology works, from a religious setting. And then there's a very good book on philosophy more generally that explains to you all the different ways of looking at the different sub-conversations of philosophy. That's Prelude to Philosophy, an Introduction for Christians. That was very good. There is a book by William Lane Craig, Christian Worldview, I think. And in there, it's a very voluminous tome. Yeah, The Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview. He co-authored this with J.P. Moreland. And in there, physics, epistemology, Zabardast. Very good. A lovely, lovely. I really like that. Very good book. Those are whatever. And again, it's precisely because I learn a lot from Christian theologians and philosophers in terms of how they understand epistemology, what works and doesn't work. Those are the main books that I found very useful from my side.
So, okay, so that's brilliant. The next topic, I don't know if there are any books available or not. If there are, that would be good, because this is also a field of my research, which is the Fitrah. Are there any books on the Fitrah or understanding the Fitrah?
The only one that I thought was very interesting was Muhammad Nabil Yassin's book, the Fitrah, the one that he published several years ago, the short one.
The name, yeah.
I'll find that. Muhammad Yassin. Yeah, Fitrah, Islamic Concept of Human Nature by Yassin Muhammad. That's the book. It was published in 1996.
Oh, I haven't read that book. Yeah.
That's a good book. That's a very good book.
Great. So next topic, which is maybe can be in some sense connected, is if you read some cognitive science of religion or something, do you have any books related to that in mind?
I would just say philosophy of mind is what I read. I'm not interested in cognitive side of religion, but in philosophy of mind, there's a book called Aping Mankind by Raymond Tallis.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
That is really a game-changing book. There's also one second. There's also a very good book that I'm trying to find. It really brings philosophy of mind in a very practical way. And it talks about AI, talked about functionalism and all of that. It had a blue cover, and I think it was with MIT Press. I'm just looking for the text. Wow, so many books on philosophy of religion that have come out. Okay. Yeah, there's one, an Introduction to Philosophy of Mind. That is, hang on, just give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find it here. Introduction to, there we go. Images, let me see. So, book. Sometimes it's easier to search on Google Images. Yeah, there we go. Minds and Computers, an Introduction to Philosophy of Artificial Intelligence. That's a good book.
Okay.
I really like that. So those are the two that I found very beneficial. And then Philosophical Foundations. I think there's Neuroscience. There's also one other one. And this is a very, Philosophical Foundations of Neuroscience by Bennett and Hacker. That's a very, very important reference. Very, very important reference. Philosophical Foundations of Neuroscience. Very good reference.
Oh, I was actually going to give you a subject like neuroscience. So since it's in some sense covered, so that's good. That field is also
because remember that these blur into one another. They kind of bleed into one another. So these three texts really, I think, just clarify the whole. And I didn't have any of the further questions. That's why I just don't really pay attention.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The next subject is, I think, very interesting, with these books on proof for God's existence.
Oh yeah. So I think the number one book in the English market right now for me is Edward Feser's 5 Proofs of God's Existence, hands down.
Okay.
Number one book market is that. Everything else that I've read, I have not found as good nor as clear as that. I've taught that book several times, and even my students say that is the number one book at least in the courses that I teach. That is probably the best books that I think exists. Maybe if you wanted to go a little bit more advanced than that, a good book would be the Blackwell Companion to Natural Theology by William Lane Craig. That's a good book.
Mm.
Goes into a lot more detail in each argument. There's a new one that came out with Bloomsbury Companion to Natural Theology. That's the latest book of Proofs of God, but that's an edited volume. That's not like a thread. But I think in terms of like a single authored thread for Proofs of God's existence, hands down, 5 proofs. 5 proofs.
Oh, interesting.
Edward Fitrah, yeah. Hands down.
And if you want to go into different arguments for God's existence, which arguments do you think are, according to you, the strongest arguments for God's existence? I think this dwells into, one of your courses, if I'm not mistaken, which is your course on proof for God's existence. You have like a 4-level course, if I'm not mistaken.
But if you wanted to know, like in terms of my structuring of the arguments for God's existence, I think the number one argument for God's existence is contingency. The contingency argument.
Go ahead.
I'd say contingency. And then after that, it's the Kalam cosmological argument and design. They're both on the same level. For previously, Kalam was here, design was here, but I now put them at the same level. And then
after contingency argument, give me one book, and then for each argument, give me one book if possible.
Oh, okay. So for the contingency argument, you have probably, for me, the best book is Fakhruddin al-Razi's text.
Oh,
this is not available.
Nice.
That is an excellent text. So that really, I think, it presents everything so systematically, so well. I don't have an English equivalent of that, but if you wanted a specific book on the contingency argument, one book that I would recommend is Necessary Existence by Alexander Post and Joshua Rasmussen, right? That would be one.
He was the last to last guest, so we had discussed.
Very, very good, excellent. Yeah,
I'd had him on the channel. Yeah.
So that's
very decent person also. Like.
Oh, he's chill. Yeah, you can have chai with him. He'll be chill. He'll be very cool.
Yeah.
So that's a good book on the contingency argument, at least in modern discourse.
Kalam cosmological, yeah.
The KCA, I think probably the best one would be, I think, William Lane Craig's, at least an English one. That could be one good one. But it's
how about Andrew Locke?
Sorry?
Andrew Locke, how about his?
Andrew Locke, he does 2 things in his book, right? So Andrew, he combines the KCA and design argument, which he's published quite recently. That's actually the 3rd book in our stream for proofs of God's existence. That combines the 2, so that could be a good book. But if you wanted a book just on design arguments, design discourse, I think you have Jason Waller. Jason Waller wrote a book on the fine-tuning arguments, which I think is a really good book. It's quite systematic, very clear. Luke Barnes has written a book. Luke Barnes, what was the book that he wrote on? 1 second. Luke Barnes, A Fortunate Universe, Life in a Finely Tuned Cosmos. So that's a good one that I prefer, fine-tuning arguments over biological arguments. That's why my focus is mostly cosmology. So those are some texts that I would recommend.
So you got 3 arguments.
Yeah, but I'll end on one point, right? I think this is perhaps helpful for people here. Fakhruddin al-Razi is one of the most systematic, sharpest theologians, at least in the Kalam tradition. One of the top tier scholars. You're not going to surpass him in terms of his details. And he spends 200 pages in his Matalib al-Aliya on arguing for God's existence. Different kinds of arguments, contingency, hudud.
Wow.
At the end, he says something super surprising. And it humbled me quite a lot. It really humbled me. He said that all of this, right, all of these discussions are far from the Quran. The closest arguments are those that are close to the Quran, which are designed arguments. They're the closest that trigger the heart. This is our scholar who you think is like a hard philosopher. But even he appreciated that not every person in the street is to be, a Kalam scholar or a philosopher, right? What triggers the heart are the simple, intuitive experiences. And maybe it's an appeal to fitrah, maybe it's an appeal to just beauty in nature. But the fact that he said it, I think, says something.
That's brilliant. So when it comes to arguments, what do you think about arguments like different kind of arguments like consciousness, psychophysical harmony, and all of that?
For me, they're totally bakwas. I don't have time for that. That's my opinion. I don't have time for anything.
Okay. So yeah, if your course, wanted to talk about your course as well. So your course is now done. So will you have any equivalent of that again? And what do you do in your 4 stages?
So I 1 second. Let me open up something here. Am I allowed to share screen?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I can do that here. Actually, yeah, divinity and science. So, yep. So let me just share screen. Share screen. Allow. Yeah, here we go. Can you see this, Khalid, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
At 2 stage.
Right. So in my own academy, the Academy of Divinity and Science, we have something called the core curriculum, right? And we teach 4 streams in this. So philosophy of science, Islam and science, proofs of God's existence, Islamic theology. And the idea, this is known as the aqliyat science, the rational sciences, right? Now, what I did was I wanted to create a curriculum which anyone can get behind, right? They don't need to have any prerequisites. So if you're doing level 1, you have 0 background behind you. And the idea is incrementally build you up to a high level. And each of these levels is 8 weeks long. So you can do level 1, stop if you want to, or you can carry on if you want to. You can stop here, carry on. So the idea is to make this as accessible as possible for students all over the world. And in proofs of God's existence, the way we've taught it is we do 8 different arguments. So these include the argument from consciousness, the moral argument, the contingency argument, different design arguments. So this is an array of arguments that we cover in this particular level.
Okay.
In level 2, it gets now concentrated into 5 particular ones. This is the one, 5 proofs of God's existence by Edward Fiedler. That's what we cover.
Okay.
In Andrew Loke, we cover 2 arguments in more detail: the Kalam cosmological and the design argument, and he puts them together quite neatly there. And then finally, necessary existence, the one that I told you about on the contingency, we do that at the end. So different ways of presenting the contingency argument.
Oh wow, that's
But
brilliant.
if I complete that stream, you will then be able to understand all the nuances, what works, what doesn't work, what's strong, what's weak. So I don't try to teach confessionally in the sense that, I'm not trying to, mold you in a certain way, but I'm definitely trying to get you to think. Like my students, I don't tell them this is right, this is wrong. I ask them, what do you think now? So the plan here is to kind of show people these are some arguments, and then you get more detailed and a bit more nuanced towards the end of the whole thing. That's what we do in the
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is very brilliant. So how can someone actually pursue this course if they want to? Like, is it something that happens every year or?
Here, it's annual. It's an annual program. So, for example, here is the cycle. We actually have our first class tomorrow, and it's done on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, right? So on Saturdays, we teach philosophy of science and Islamic science in the evenings, UK time, and then proofs of God's Islam on the Sundays. So you can see the timings here. And so we upload a yearly cycle, so that this website is updated. So as you can see, the first class is tomorrow. We're recording on the 5th of September. So this is on the 6th of September, for example, right? And the registration link is just there. So if you click there, it takes you to the form, you sign in, and then you do what you need to do. That's it.
Right.
Simple as that.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. So before I move ahead, like what do you think about these new aspects of new arguments that have come in, like nomological harmony for God's existence, and then they tie to psychophysical harmony for God's existence? What is your take on this?
My personal take is it's a waste of time. That's my personal opinion. Once you kind of understood contingency, I think everything is further details. I don't have much tolerance for that. I think that there's a point at which it just becomes personal interest, and I don't have interest in this.
Okay. That's acceptable. So we move to another subject, which is some books on critiquing modernism and postmodernism.
Okay. There are a few that come to my mind. So there is a book, Theology of Modernity. Text. There is a book. This book is not very friendly to Muslims, but it's the Theological Origins of Modernity. I would recommend that. History, and then there's another one that I'd recommend. History.
The name of the book? By
Theological Origins of Modernity by Michael Allen Gillespie. As I said, it has a certain interpretation regarding Muslims. I would avoid that, but that's a good That's a good one of a text that I think people should read. There's Olson. One second, Roger Olson. I'm trying to remember him. Yeah, The Journey of Modern Theology from Reconstruction to Deconstruction by Roger Olson. That's a good book.
No.
People should be reading. Another one is A Secular Age by Charles Taylor. That is a must. That's quite,
Yeah. A secular age, yeah.
that's a very, very good text to read. There's also what's his name? Idol of Our Age. This is a very powerful book. The Idol of Our Age: How the Religion of Humanity Subverts Christianity. Very, very, very powerful book. Very, very powerful book. And then The Myth of Religious Violence. There's another one that I recommend. Yeah, William Cavanaugh. That's his name. The Uses of Idolatry by William Cavanaugh. Right?
Oh,
That's another one. And then the last one I would recommend, The Unintended Reformation by Brad Gregory. That's what I
wow.
recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
That-
brilliant.
The title of this book is How a Religious Revolution Secularized Society. Very interesting.
Now next subject, which is maybe a bit connected, or which is liberalism and feminism. Any book related to that?
Not my area. I don't look into that.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe another subject that we can actually touch on is
Oh wait,
colonization.
there's one that on the issue of secularism, by Baker. Yeah, The End of Secularism by Hunter Baker. That's another one that came to my mind.
Okay, mashallah. So we have a very good collection of books here. Any on colonization, like how, all over the world, how it happened or something like that?
So for me, that's just history. I've understood more about colonization than history, but actual like colonial critiques, not my area. That's not what I look into.
How about some book on philosophy of history, if there is any?
Philosophy of history is, for me, mostly just how you do history. Like, what are the the pitfalls of doing history, anachronism, and all of that, historiography. I haven't really read a good book on philosophy of history. There is what I have read are books that are interesting philosophically, because one of the arguments against evolution is that it's a science that looks into historical things, events, or items, right? Now, there's a discussion in philosophy of science regarding, so with atoms, I can tweak them here and now and do experiments, but I cannot tweak a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To infer from traces. So I have less conviction in my historical data than I do have in my here and now physics chemistry data.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a discussion that is happening within philosophy of science on, okay, how much conviction do we have in historical sciences, things like evolution, archaeology, that kind of thing. So one book that really is very nice, 1 second, Derek, philosophy of science, Derek, there we go. Making Prehistory, Historical Science and the Scientific Realism Debate. That is that's a very fun book.
Wow.
Very fun book.
Yeah, this is interesting how you connected it to anti-realism and realism. I mean, the guest that yesterday I had was Dr. Jerome Thomas Bridges. He actually wrote a book on evolution, and it says, can there be a scientific alternative to neo-Darwinism? But within that book, I think of the first, have you read his book?
No, I'm not.
Oh, yeah. So I'll definitely recommend that. So within that, actually, he was arguing on this aspect only. I think most portion of the book was that all of the sciences cannot be the same. You cannot just have a general realist approach or general anti-realist approach. You have to take them on a case-by-case basis. And then he explained how evolutionary biology is different from other sciences like zoology, botany, or by Big Bang cosmology. So that was interesting.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so
debate is well known. So people are moving away from so the terminology that they use in philosophy of science is global position and local position. So a global position is, what do you think all sciences should be, realism or anti-realism? The problem is that this flattens the distinctions between the disciplines, right? So clearly, I have more conviction in things like engineering and quantum mechanics than certain historical influences that I have, right? Clearly. So there's an anti-statement here. So that's why some people differentiate between global scientific realism and anti-realism. What is your global stance versus local scientism and anti-realism? So what is your local opinion on quantum mechanics? What is your local opinion on evolution, for example?
Yeah, that's a brilliant distinction. I think that makes sense. Now, the next subject is critical thinking and argumentation. Any book on that?
I think that you just need to practice logic and be in a classroom. I think that any book that you have to read about critical thinking won't really do the job, because critical thinking by its very nature requires practice and engagement.
So any book on logic, if there is any?
Yeah, so that's my point. Logic teaches you the grammar of argumentation, but to actually better at logic, you need to be in classes. That's what I'm trying to say. But if you want logic,
you cannot be an autodidact. Use like having human that connection and conversation is better.
Even with AI is fine. Even with AI is fine. You can talk to ChatGPT and you can become a good interlocutor. But what I've learned from is that to be really good at being able to detect poor arguments and sound arguments is you need to have space for listening and engaging back and forth, as opposed to just reading it off a paper. But a good book on logic, a very useful one, is Logic, A Complete Introduction, a Step-by-Step Teach Yourself Guide. And this is by, I don't know how to say it, Siufan Lee. Siufan Lee.
Okay. That's brilliant. So I think maybe we'll cover just only two more fields, and then we can move to maybe the last subject that we have. We can briefly cover that because I think we are short for time anyway. So the next field that we have, because I think all of these many abstract and these field, one thing which we should recommend, I think, any book on this purification of the soul.
For me, it was just the one book that really did the job for me. Actually, no. When I was younger, I think this is a book I needed. It's Riyad by Hidden Shirk by Sheikh Yasir Qadhi. That's a very, very beautiful text. It's very, very profound. Very short, but very profound as a text. Riyad. Then after that, I would recommend Ya Ayyuhal Walad by Imam Ghazali. Oh Son, it's been translated to English, right? And it's a book by Imam Ghazali advising a student of his, I think, on how to engage with, opening your heart, basically, how to understand, that there's more to it than just simply, looking into rational sciences. There's also the heart issue, and his famous magnum opus, Ihya Ulumuddin. That's a phenomenal text, right? Really, really, really good text. So those are some of the more tasawwufi angles that I would recommend. Those are very, very profound.
Great. That just gets me to another question that came to my mind.
Rumi, the Mathnawi.
Okay,
Rumi.
Okay.
His poetry, the Mathnawi. That's another one. I absolutely love the Mathnawi. Absolutely love the Mathnawi. It's such a beautiful text.
Okay. So this wasn't, I was planning to ask, but it came to my mind. Your favorite Seerah book?
It's by Ramadan Bhuti. Fiqh Seerah, I think. Ramadan Bhuti. Fiqh, jurisprudence. Hang on. I think it's by Ramadan Bhuti. I think that the jurisprudence of prophetic biography that's it. The jurisprudence, and it's, I think, the jurisprudence of prophetic biography, Fiqh Seerah. I think that's what. And it's this was a very, very, very good text. Very, very good text. I really liked that a lot. So Sheikh Ramadan al-Bhuti, he had this amazing way. So he presented a an event, and then he showed you the lessons you could derive from it. So it was very presentable. But if you wanted to advance more than that, then Sheikh Yasir Qadhi's Seerah online on YouTube, not the book, the one online.
Oh, okay. Now I think one thing comes to my mind is Islam and economics. Any book on that?
Yeah, not my area. I don't know.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Islam and technology. Any book?
No, I mean, like, the person that comes to my mind is Said Hassan Nasr. He criticizes technological developments from a spiritual angle. So that may be something that people are interested in. But yeah, not something.
The name of the book?
It's his book with Muzaffar Iqbal. Sayyid Hussein Nasr Iqbal. I think, yeah, Islam, Science and Technology. Islam, Science, Muslims and Technology. Sorry, that's the name.
Wow, that's brilliant. I think one last question would be any great books in Western philosophy?
For me, it'd be Father Coppelson's 11-volume set, The History of Western Philosophy. Father Coppelson.
The history of Western philosophy. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's something I need to look into.
Very, very good. I would say that is. And also, if people have the time, the original works of Aristotle and Plato. They're very good.
Okay.
If you understand those, you really understand a lot of the developments, even in Kalam, very, very well. Very, very well.
Okay, so that is brilliant. I think this is where we end the rapid fire. It was not quite a rapid fire, but yeah, I clearly enjoyed it. I think this is something that was much needed. That, all of the books that you go through. I think it can benefit many people because now you filtered out and given us the best ones which you like or which came to your mind, which had the most impact on you. Now maybe the last section, which we will swiftly cover because we are anyway short for time, is something that recently came out, which is Islam and Science by Shoaib Ahmed Malik, by you. What this thing exactly is and what does this contain? Is it a book or just an online PDF? Like, if you can.
It's a micrograph. So a micrograph is anything that is 30,000 words or below. So this is a 10,000 word overview of Islam and Science, and then there is, I think, another 5 to 10,000 words of a bibliography with annotations. So it's designed for people who want to get into the field. And I was approached by the team, which you see at the bottom, and they wanted to provide accessible resources for the wider Muslim community, right? And Islam and Science was a big pressing concern. So in there, what I do is I provide historical overview, like how did we get to where we are today? What is the history of Islam and Science? But also, what are the main subject areas? So these are some of the things that we've talked about. For example, Islam and physics, Islam and evolution, things like bioethics, right? And it's just there to provide an easy to understand introduction to the field. That is it. That is its function.
Wow, that's brilliant. So one thing I would mention in this book is that when I went through it, I think what you did is you highlight how within the future part. Okay, so one part was regarding the history of science, but then the next section was the future in Islam and Science, and which was really fascinating for me, where you highlighted many different subjects where there has to be some advancements, and there has been these aspects of science do engage with the Islamic world in some sense. One interesting aspect was Islamic bioethics, and which touches on the subject of, for example, human cloning and stuff like that, which definitely needs some more scholarly interaction and see what would be Islam's take on to allow something like that or not. Yeah. Can you just very briefly touch on that? And then I have another question, another interesting subject.
There are many ways to do Islam and Science. So you can look at Islam and Science historically. We talked about history before. You can look at it philosophically or theologically, which is what I am interested in, right? And then you can also look at it from a fiqh angle, like a jurisprudential angle, right? So what is halal, haram? Now, of course, many developments in bioethics that are questioning us to rethink some things or to address things, right? So one example is organ transplantation. So can I receive it from somebody else? Yes or no? Can I receive an organ from a non-Muslim? Yes or no? Right? Can I give to a non-Muslim? Yes or no? Can we even have organ from animals? Is that something that's permissible? Yes or no? So these are some of the debates that take place within the field. One interesting one is ectogenesis, right? The idea of there being artificial wombs. Yeah. So if you imagine you take the sex cell from a mother and father and you put it in a machine, and the machine then produces the baby after 9 months. So imagine it's completely outsourced out of mom. Just imagine, right? So is that something we should be encouraging? Yes or no? So a lot of these technological advancements are going to have interesting pressures for theologians, particularly for those who study fiqh, who are specializing in fiqh. This is not my area. I'm not interested in this space. But this is why I think this deserves a lot of attention, because a lot of our Muslim medics who are clearly well-versed, they can be very helpful in developing these conversations, because clearly no one person can master all the sciences. It's impossible.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah? What will happen is that we need people from this side speaking to people on this side.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and definitely.
you speak to theologians need to speak to doctors. Very rarely do you get overlap between the two. So I think that this is what we have to encourage more of. So that's why I think that bioethics is a very interesting space, because it's pushing our boundaries in many, many, many ways.
Okay. So bioethics is very interesting. One more subject you spoke about, which definitely needs more recognition, is theological anthropology. What that is according to you? Can you give us?
So that's the field that I'm working on. So theological anthropology is understanding what is human nature, human uniqueness, right? Previously, I mean, if you go back 1,000 years ago, when we thought about human nature and human uniqueness, we usually compared ourselves to angels, jinn, and animals. That was our point of comparison. And so what we were and weren't were always drawn along those things. However, we have now new interesting ideas that are forcing us to reconsider. So for example, evolution. Could there be other humans alongside Adam? Right? Is he strictly the first human or the first prophet, for example? For instance, AI. Can we have machines that are, smarter than us? Could there be artificial sentience, consciousness? Yes or no? Right? One is extraterrestrials. So, for example, world where Allah created aliens on other planets, could they have their own revelation? Could they be superior to us? Right? All of these are forcing us, even if they're theoretical with the aliens, for example, but they're forcing us to reconsider what we mean by human nature, human uniqueness. And this is what I'm looking into. I'm looking at Fakhruddin Al-Razi's ideas and being able to bring his ideas into a new context by juxtaposing them with these concerns. So that's what theological anthropology is. Haqiqatul Insan. That's what it is.
That's brilliant. And I think that the last thing that I want to very briefly touch on, because I think we are short for time anyway, is on one thing that you were talking about in your book is two types of methodological naturalism and divine action models. What that is, can you very briefly explain?
Yeah, so methodological naturalism is the idea. So let me start with philosophical naturalism. Philosophical naturalism is a metaphysical position. It says that only nature exists, nothing supernatural exists. So angels, God, etc., out of the equation. Methodological naturalism says, however, and there are nuances here, but I'm trying to keep it simple, is what is the boundary of science, right? What is the boundary of science? Can science look into things like God, angels, heaven, hellfire? No, they are metaphysical entities, right? So science is only in the business of making claims about the natural world. I can study plants, I can study animals, I can study disease, I can study blood, for example. Those are things that are within my rubric. But then there are things that are not within that rubric. So the reason why methodological naturalism is a question, is a point of debate within the field of science and religion, is precisely because it depends on how far you want to push scientism. If you believe science can answer all the questions, then you're going to think immediately science equals philosophical naturalism. It's a materialistic view, which is false, right? Here, when an atheist and a theist, when they do an acid-base reaction, one is a Muslim, one's an atheist, right? They're doing the same thing. They're getting the same conclusion. But what is the difference? Is their worldview. One accepts that there's a world beyond the physical. One accepts it's just a physical, for instance. Why there is this debate about philosophical naturalism versus methodological naturalism. Clearly, Muslims cannot accept philosophical naturalism because then your core beliefs are out of the window. So methodological is a safe space where you can understand that science is only in the business of explaining the natural world. Does it explain your worldview though? No. It has an
So within that, there were two types. One was intrinsic methodological naturalism, and there was another one. And you were talking about how divine action models, by God intervening, like the possibility of that. Can you very briefly touch on that?
Yeah. So intrinsic methodological naturalism is saying this is what science cannot do, right? Pragmatically, you keep the boundaries fuzzy. So, for example, right now, perhaps we don't have any empirical control on things like the jinn, for example, right? Could we at one point in the future, like for example, I remember one Pakistani general, I think he said that we should use the jinn for nuclear power. So, right? So could we one day somehow bring into maybe some kind of empirical fold? So you're not making categorical claims about science, you're keeping the categories fuzzy, hence you call it pragmatic. It's what now, but perhaps it might shift in the future. Whereas at first, science categorically just does not make supernatural claims. That's it.
Okay. So within these two types of methodological naturalism, which one makes more sense to you?
Both. I'm fine with that. Okay. Science is not my worldview. So whether scientists want to say this is the way of being science, this is okay, khalas. Well done. Shabash.
Oh.
There's no difference to me.
Wow, that's brilliant. I think this, on this note, I think we can end the discussion. And I just want to say I can't express the joy with having this conversation and all of these book recommendations. Like at least for a year or two, like you have filled my whole case of what I have to read, or even for the audience, I believe. So it was fascinating to go through many of these subjects. In fact, there are so many things that you have given me, which I'll reflect on after this conversation. Any closing statement? I will give you the stage to have any closing statement you have, and then we can end the discussion.
No, I just want to say thank you very much for having me. I hope this was a beneficial conversation. And, if there are any questions, please do reach out. But otherwise, I hope that this was a fruitful dialogue for everyone.
Definitely, obviously fruitful. How would people reach you if they wanted to reach you? Like, is there any way
to reach out to me? Unfortunately, people try to reach out to me on social media. I don't respond. I just don't. It's not something I do. The best way is just really just reaching out on my profile. So I think people don't realize that every professor on the planet has a university profile, right? Here is my university you can share the screen. I'm just sharing screen. Khalid. Yeah. So this is my university profile, and people can Khalid is yeah. So this is my university profile. There's my email, and you can just email me there. Every professor, it's not like hidden information. It's not esoteric.
Okay.
Just contact me.
Okay. So now we have the people can actually reach you in case if they have any questions. Yeah, but I think that is brilliant, and it's good to see that from our ummah, these frontiers in science and this advancement is happening. So in so many different spheres, and of course it is required. I would love to have you back with maybe something new that you come up, because you do, of course, every few days you come up with something new and some interesting topic. So I would also recommend people to follow you on, I think Twitter is the best place where they can follow you and keep up with all of your work. And
those are the main areas, Twitter and Facebook.
And I would love to have you back when you come up with something interesting. Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Barakallahu feek. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.